Hey guys, so in yesterday's lesson we went over intervals, we went over the different names of the scale degrees, and we also went over all of the differences between half steps and whole steps and how they're useful in building scales and keys. So if you did not complete the assignment in class yesterday, it's really important that you look up the video at your own time and take care of this. As you guys can see right now, I'm in my hotel in San Antonio at the TMEA conference. And a little bit sunburned after going to see the Alamo earlier today. Today we're going to be expanding on the knowledge that we built yesterday by talking about how not all intervals are equal, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll be able to understand the difference between minor, major, and perfect intervals, in addition to how these affect chords. So let's get started. All right, so yesterday we talked about the scales and how we build a scale. We talked about the C major scale and how that works. We also talked about the intervals between being in half steps and whole steps. Now you can see right here we have a piano keyboard drawn very, very expertly on a La Quinta notepad. Now the expertly drawn, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson's dying over here off camera right now. Let's review how we talked about half steps and how we talked about whole steps yesterday, as well as how we talked about intervals. So the first note that I have here, the C, as I go C to C sharp, that's going to be a half step because I'm going to the next available note. As I go from C, I'm going to keep rolling. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you guys do. As I go from C to D, I'm going to the next available note after passing one by, skipping the C sharp in between. So half step, going from the C to the C sharp, and then whole step, going from the C to D. I'm still recording. This is all going in the video. It's fine. So, we also talked about how we can do interval names to get to the different parts, and we talked about how as I move up, it is the number of notes that I'm moving up. So C to D is a second, C to E is a third because I'm moving to the third note, C to F is the fourth, C to G, etc., is all the way through. Now, there are a couple of special terms that we didn't talk about yesterday that we need to identify to make this work better. The first one is the role of the octave. Now, if I have C and I have the same C played again, I'm not actually playing a different note. We call that a unison. So if I played the C at the bottom of the keyboard twice, down here, that would be a unison note. But if I play a C and then play one 8 notes up or 8 notes down, then I'm going to be playing the octave of it. This is pretty common terminology. We use this a lot in band class. This shouldn't be something new to you. Now, what is going to be new to you guys is the idea of major or minor intervals. So yesterday we talked about second, third, fourth, fifth. Well, if I move to that note, generally, if I have a note underneath it, I have two different qualities for that note. We're going to use E as an example here. So as I'm going from C to E, we identified this yesterday as a third because I'm going from the first note to the third note. However, if you look underneath that, I have D right next to it, and that's a second. There's still a note in between the two. So I could move to the E flat instead of the E natural on the bottom row of the piano, and if I did that, I'd be moving to the minor third. So rather than moving from the first to the third, I'm moving to the minor third. It is lower than the third. If I have to identify the E as something different at this point in time, I'm identifying that it is a major third because I'm going there and it's in the key. So the major third is where I'm going usually. If it can go lower, it's going to be the minor third. Now, an octave and a unison, because they are what they are, and there's no way to lower those notes because they wouldn't be the same note if it was, are what we call perfect intervals. So I have a C to a C in the same octave. It is a perfect unison. A C to a C in the higher octave is a perfect octave, or P8 for short. Now, similarly, the fourth note, the F, can't be lowered. There's not a note there to lower it to. So C to F is a perfect fourth. Now, there is one interval that's a little bit confusing to understand, and that is that of the perfect fifth, which is the G. Now, as you see, I do have the G flat that I could go to, which would be lowered. But this particular interval here, the C to the G flat or the F sharp, depending on how you want to look at it, is a very peculiar interval. So I basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half steps to get to that note above the normal thing. This note is called a tritone. Now, in the history of music, as we're discussing different types of notes, it's really important to remember how much of an impact the church had in doing this. And tritones, because of their very dissonant sound, were considered evil and were avoided at all consequences. So the reason we have that perfect fifth, that C to the G, is because you couldn't lower to the tritone. That note didn't exist for songwriting purposes for a very long time until the past couple hundred years. So let's review how these all work together. Okay, so just a review here. We have the keyboard laid out, and then we have the intervals matching this. So at the bottom we have unison. The first accidental we have with C sharp is our minor second, identified by the lowercase m. Then the D would become the major second. We have the minor third, major third, perfect fourth, and perfect fifth with the tritone in between. Minor sixth, major sixth, minor seventh, major seventh, and then the octave. So these are very specific intervals that we can use to identify this. So let's look at why it's important to understand these intervals and their distinction. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be building chords. Now, whenever I build a chord, the easiest way to remember it is the following phrase. Do you want to build a snowman? And if you can do that, you can build chords. So right here I have a staff with a treble clef on it. That is drawn very poorly on a La Quinta notepad. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an A on the staff. So you can see right there I have the A already there. Now if I layer the notes on top of it to make it look like a snowman, I'll have my chord. So I go to the next space that's available from the A, which is the C, and then I go up to the E to make my snowman. If instead I started on the A and I skip the space and put a note on a line, a snowman no longer appears. It looks like a mess of notes. Now, once I have this done, the way I use the intervals changes how the chord sounds. So you see in this first example here, I have an A with a C and an E. That is a minor third with a major third on top of it. The second one I have is an A, C sharp, E, which is a major third with a minor third on top of it. The first one, which starts on a minor third, is a minor chord and sounds sad. This is an example of a minor chord. The same chord, built with the major third first, will have a happy characteristic. This is starting on the same note and ending on the same note, but with a major third in the middle instead. So to compare those side by side, I'm going to change the major third to a minor so you can hear the difference. Here it is again. Minor, major, minor, major.
For your lesson. Damn.
I'm leaving this in.
Huh?
I'm leaving this in, you crunching on chips. You can crunch, man, it's recording. What even are those?
I'm an ancient baked smoky barbecue grain puffs
They're
made,
Cheetos.
made with ancient and sprouted grains, seasoned with smoky mesquite barbecue spices blend.
So they're barbecue Cheetos.
Yeah, man.
Okay. So, in the next segment, basically what we're going to be doing is you are going to be doing an assignment where you are going to draw a staff. In the staff, you're going to put it in the key of C, which we talked about in yesterday's video. We are going to draw the scale of C. So starting either in treble or bass clef, whatever is more comfortable for you, you are going to draw the scale out. Once the scale is drawn out, you're going to build a chord on top of every single note. So remember, if I start on a space, I need the space with the two spaces above it. If I start on a line, the line with the two lines above it. Finally, underneath the note, I'm going to identify if the chord is major or minor. Now, I will tell you there is one chord in the scale that is neither major or minor that we will talk about in tomorrow's lesson. Because this is far more complex than what we did yesterday, you're going to have more time to work on this. You will have an entire time of 10 minutes to draw the staff out with all the notes and all the chords and label it. When you get finished with this, you're expected, as before, to do work for another class or read a book quietly at whatever the sub's discretion is. Now remember, if you don't understand this from yesterday, you can always go back and watch the video from yesterday to understand how the key and the scales work, and also where the notes are from C to C on the scale. This is entirely work on your own at this point in time. Your time starts now.